Good afternoon, and welcome to the Wednesday afternoon conference call with Trusts Unlimited. This is Jim George speaking. I'm the non-attorney spokesman and facilitator for Trusts Unlimited, and I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to this call. If you enjoy these calls, I certainly hope that you will click the subscribe button, and if you'd be kind enough, share these calls with anyone you think might be interested in the things we have to say. Today's call is going to be a little shorter. I would strongly recommend for our newer callers, you take the time to listen to our call of February 15th, February 22nd, and March 1st. Things are really moving in Iraq, and they're frankly moving in this country, not necessarily in the right direction, and I'll get into that in a moment. But the reason the call's shorter today is because we are extremely busy. My phone's blowing up. My text is blowing up. Our emails are blowing up. I'm on the phone 10, 12 hours a day, and I just can't keep up. So if you're an individual that's contacted us and hasn't heard from me, I promise you you're on the list, and we'll get to you just as quickly as we can. So let's go ahead and get started. Today is March 8th. First, by way of disclaimer, Trusts Unlimited is not the purveyor of the dinar and these other pre-valued currencies. We're not advocating either the sale or purchase of these currencies, but as rather substantial currency holders ourselves, we're sharing with you the information we believe to be most relevant. Of course, what we're all most interested in is the reinstitution of the dinar, which is the catalyst for everything else that will occur. Its revaluation globally along with some of these other currencies. So let's talk about what's going on in Iraq, because the momentum continues to build toward the reinstitution of their currency. We know the draft budget is being presented to the parliament today, so that will be discussed, debated, and hopefully passed in the not-too-distant future. There's been a lot of agreement by opposing parties in a lot of areas, and so this is all good news. Now, right now, the rate of the dinar against the USD is 13.10, and a lot of people are speculating whether the budget will get passed with or without the currency reinstituting, or if the budget passes at whatever rate, they're locked into that rate. In my view, that's not the case. As far as I'm concerned, the exchange rate and the budget are not directly linked. In a perfect world, the currency would reinstitute and then go to the budget, but we're talking about Iraq. There are no perfect world scenarios, and we do know that the currency has fluctuated a great deal after past budgets have been passed. So I've never considered the rate being directly linked to the budget, and the rate can change at any time whether it's linked to the budget or not. So we're at 13.10 right now. I expect there'll be one more drop before they reinstitute, but again, I do not see this linked to the budget at all. Then there are some agreements between Baghdad and the Kurds, both the HCL and Article 140 of the Constitution. They have come to agreement there, so passage and implementation of those laws will be accomplished as well. Then we have the CBI. They've announced the introduction of the new notes, the lower denoms, and further that they expect another rate change around mid-March. So that's only a week away. This tells me that if they have one more rate change, they're going to go. That's just another incentive to move forward with the budget, because they know that clearly what the direction of the dinar is. Now, one caveat here, and we've discussed this at length. Once we get to about mid-March, I do not want to see a reinstitution or revalue. Well, I don't know that we can avoid a reinstitution, but I certainly don't want to see a revaluation prior to April 1st, because that means that taxes would be due on April 15th. It's unclear exactly what the tax is, and without knowing what the tax is, unfortunately, we'd be forced to pay an ordinary income tax and file for a refund based on Section 980, 82, and 643A and B of the Internal Revenue Code. I'm not going to get into this in detail. Those of you that have been listening to our calls know what I'm talking about. If you're a newer caller, once again, 988E2 and 643A and B. You're going to want to take a look at that. So, again, once we hit the Ides of March, April would be a wonderful time. Incidentally, over the last 100 years, currencies that have substantially revalued have revalued in January, April, and September, primarily because, in my opinion, countries' fiscal year is either a calendar year or it's a fiscal year beginning on April 1st. So for those reasons, those 3 months, January, April, and September, seem to be months that work with these various countries. But again, my rationale is we don't want to have a revaluation a couple of weeks before the tax man is due, because we don't know for a fact exactly what the tax implication is in or out of a trust. Now, 980.82 refers to the gain being cap gain, but given these kleptocrats running the country right now, I don't trust them at all, and I think we would prevail in court, but after this revaluation, the last thing we want to be involved in is a couple of years of litigation because these kleptocrats want to get paid. So to make things very simple, I won't belabor it again, sometime in April would be optimum for the revaluation globally. Now I want to talk a little bit more about what we're going to be facing, particularly those of us who have currencies or any asset we think is going to substantially increase in value, because we're watching the creation of a high-tax, high-surveillance state by this bunch in Washington. And I want to get into that a little bit because this will help to explain why any American citizen is going to need to utilize our trust package. As a Dinarian or as an American citizen, the establishment of a family asset protection trust package is the single best thing you can do to neutralize the intrusive state policies that we're dealing with. I want to talk about two things here. First, the contract clause within the Constitution and the Fourth Amendment. Our salvation is the Constitution, because everything that we're witnessing is flat out unconstitutional. They know it, we know it, everyone knows it, and it's got to be dealt with. There are still two organizations, for lack of a better word, that I still have faith in. One is the Supreme Court, and second is the United States military. So as long as those two remain intact, I think we're going to be able to put our heads down and plow through what's going on. But I want to touch on these two sections, the contract clause and the Fourth Amendment. So let's start with the contract clause. I'm going to read it quickly, and then I'm going to show you how the people in Washington right now are flagrantly violating, knowingly, our Constitution. This is Article 1, Section 10, Clause 1 of the Constitution. No state shall enter into any treaty, alliance, or confederation, grant letters of marque or reprisal, coin money, emit bills of credit, make anything but gold or silver coin a tender in payment of debts, pass any bill of attainder, ex post facto law, or law impairing the obligation of contracts, or grant any title of nobility. So let's walk through these. The state shall enter into no treaty, alliance, or confederation. Well, we know that the states created a confederation, and we had a civil war over that. Second, grant letters of marque or reprisal. That basically means contract some private entity to collect a bounty from some individuals, country, or group that they feel is indebted to them. Coin money, which the state can't do. Emit bills of credit. That means give out interest-free loans, and we'll get into loans. Make anything but gold or silver coin. At the time, of course, gold and silver were the coin of the realm. A tender in payment of debts. Pass any bill of attainder. Now, what is a bill of attainder? A bill of attainder is when the government declares a person or group guilty of treason without a trial. Now, what was January 6th? It was the wholesale declaration of an insurrection, which of course is treason. These people have been held without trial for nearly 2 years. In addition, these people have been denied something in our Constitution, habeas corpus. Habeas corpus means anyone that's being accused has the right to be presented to a court to proceed with a process for the accused to challenge the unlawful detention or imprisonment. These people have been denied habeas corpus. They've been charged with insurrection, which is treason. They've been held against their will, without legal representation, and without being permitted to go to a court. As far as I'm concerned, the people that have done this are the people that are committing treason. And they're grotesquely violating the civil liberties of every single person that's being detained on the charge of insurrection. Next, ex post facto law. Ex post facto law means the passage of a law after an event in order to punish someone or some group. I'll give you one example of an ex post facto law. 20 years ago, I guess, George Steinbrenner, the owner of the New York Yankees, passed away. He had an estate worth about $650 million. But it just so happens that he died in the single year where the Congress was split on what to do with the federal estate tax. And for that 1 year, there was no federal estate tax. Under current law, if George Steinbrenner had died today with an estate of $650 million, he could have, worst case scenario, had to pay as much as $400 million in a federal estate tax. But as it turned out, there was no federal estate tax in that year, and 100 cents on the dollar passed to his heirs. Now, the kleptocrats that run the state of New York didn't like that. So they tried to change their state federal estate tax law and bump it up substantially in order to tax Steinbrenner. Well, it got kicked to the curb because it was an ex post facto law. They were trying to retroactively change the law for one person. But this is what kleptocrats and control freaks do. Now, let's talk about one other thing here, and that is the Fourth Amendment of the Constitution. Short, to the point, like most of the Constitution, I'll read it. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall be issued but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. All right. Well, this is what the Fourth Amendment says. Now, let's look at what's happened over the last 20 years. Well, of course, we had 9/11, and there's arguments about whether we were involved in it, whether we had information that we should have known would have resulted in 9/11, whether the federal government was completely caught unawares. But in any event, they passed the Patriot Act in order to, quote unquote, keep us safe. And part of the Patriot Act says basically if you want to travel anywhere, you can be searched, a body search and everything, all of your belongings would be searched. Well, this unfortunately is a violation of the Fourth Amendment. But for the sake of safety, and because, once again, the people by majority sort of look the other way, it got through. Now, what's happened since then? Well, we had COVID. And what did they attempt to do? To close businesses down, to try to establish a vax mandate if you want to travel. They fire individuals who have not been vaccinated, particularly in the health industry. Many individuals in the military, just a year or two away from retirement, were forced to leave the military rather than get vaccinated. And even worse, they were given a dishonorable discharge. This is all a violation of their rights. Remember, since Roe v. Wade for the last 50-some years, The left has wagged their finger at us saying, my body, my choice. But then all of a sudden after COVID, they said, shut up and take the vax. It's a violation of our civil liberties. It's a violation of the HIPAA regs and everything else. But they went one step further, and they're working on it right now. The ultimate violation of our privacy, which is the establishment of a central bank digital currency. They will track all of our legal purchases. They will track all of our investments, all of our business activities, all of our travel. It's not acceptable. Now, here's one that is not important to many people, but it should be important, and it was this, the raid on Mar-a-Lago. In my opinion, Trump was singled out. He was treated in a way that no one else has ever been treated. And here's the proof of it, very simply. Remember what I said, that they could be searched pursuant to a warrant based upon probable cause, which is supported by oath or affirmation. That means someone submitted an affidavit which provided enough information for the government to establish probable cause and then search. Well, unfortunately, Garland, the DOJ, refuses to release the affidavit. This is the same thing they did with the last impeachment thing where we're not supposed to know the name of the whistleblower. It's absurd. It's unconstitutional. It's our fault for allowing it. But nevertheless, it happened. These are the things we're dealing with. Now, as an individual citizen, there's not much we can do. We have to get together as groups. We have to all vote. We have to, do our research, learn the things that we need to know. But as an individual, there is something you can do. And that is establish our Family Asset Protection Trust package. Now, we've been marketing this for over a decade for Dinarians because there are distinct advantages for placing assets in trust prior to their appreciation. And when you have currencies that could appreciate substantially, like more than anything I've ever experienced in my 40 years in business, it makes sense to transfer the asset to a trust before it appreciates. But witnessing what's gone on in this country for the last 2 or 3 years, our founders, in their wisdom, put in place preemptively a way we can avoid what they're attempting to do, which is basically to run every aspect of our lives. Because your Family Asset Protection Trust package is a contract. It's a contract you've established to protect yourself pursuant to your Fourth Amendment rights. And they still exist. Now, I want to talk about these benefits based on you as a Dinarian and you as an American citizen that may not be a Dinarian, may not have any asset that you think is going to appreciate substantially, but basically you want to live your life in peace and you want to be left alone. You're a free citizen. You are not a ward of the state. You are not a serf governed by the elite, because there are no elite. As a matter of fact, in the contract clause, the last statement says that the government shall grant no title of nobility. That means we are all equal. There are not more important people. There are not elite. There are only American citizens. Rich, middle class, poor, black or white, Christian, Muslim, atheist. We are all equal. But we still have to protect our rights because the government evidently has no respect for those rights. So let's talk about this trust and its benefits. First, it provides privacy and anonymity. That means the assets within these trusts are sealed, and no one knows your net worth or your actual holdings. Now, this is particularly important if you are in a position, as we are with these currencies, to have an extremely large windfall come your way. That's something we don't want everyone to know. First of all, because we know all of the individuals, the grifters, are going to be coming after you to get a piece of it, because we know some people are going to file frivolous lawsuits and all of that, but they don't know what's in the trust unless they can show probable cause to a court. They're never going to know what's in that trust. Another thing with this trust is, unlike LLCs, sub-S corporations, family limited partnerships, and the like, those are statutory creatures, meaning they're registered with the various states. They know what you have and what's in that. But the trust is recorded or registered with no county, no state, or the federal government. It's completely private, and what's in there is private. Second, in terms of gifting, if you're a Dinarian and you have this trust has within its package a gift subtrust. So you can not only gift currencies to individuals pre-RV to avoid a federal gift tax, but through this gift subtrust, you can actually control the post-RV proceeds. And that's very important for individuals. That's very important for individuals that are leaving gifts to individuals, and they're a little bit concerned about giving an individual a large sum of money. They may be young, they may be inexperienced, they may have physical or mental disabilities, or other reasons. So that's very important. But if you're just a citizen who wants to assist family and friends, you can give them what's called a life estate. In other words, you can buy a home or a car or something of that nature. Allow them use of that asset, but it still remains within the trust and within your complete control. The next thing that the trust does, it allows you to avoid personal IRS scrutiny, which means if the currencies are assigned to the trust, if all of your assets in trust, the tax issues are dealt with through the trust, not you personally. Now, this is important because the IRS loves to go after the low-hanging fruit. When you are in a position to be audited, the IRS looks and says, well, these individuals have a very sophisticated trust, which means they most likely have very sophisticated legal representation, which means they probably know what they're doing, so we're going to move on and talk to someone else. Another issue is by establishing this trust, not only will you avoid the cost and delay of probate, which of course opens up everything you have to the general public, but you're going to be able to avoid the federal estate tax. Under current law, the portion of your estate in excess of $10 million can be taxed as much as 65%. But if your assets are within this family asset protection trust, the federal estate tax is going to be zero. And lastly, because you've established a package of trust, you're utilizing a legal strategy called segregation of assets. That means that you place each of your assets, homes, cars, boats, etc., in separate sub-trusts. So if any of those assets ever get involved in civil litigation, it's only that asset that would be involved. All of the other assets and all of your net worth are safely protected in the other sub-trusts. So for all of these reasons, whether you're a Dinarian or not, you need to establish your family asset protection trust package. One other thing I'll mention is with regard to the central bank digital currency. What you're going to want to do, since they're transitioning to this currency, is to transition as much of your wealth as possible into tangible assets. They pay a dividend, and of course that dividend is exposed to the central bank digital currency, but the bulk of your wealth will be in tangible assets outside of the central bank digital currency. Now, for those of you that have dinar and have a substantial amount of dinar and have a substantial amount of wealth, there are a number of things you can do offshore to further limit the intrusion of the central bank digital currency and other little goodies I'm sure this bunch in Washington has in store. But we can trump them with this trust package because the contract clause in the Fourth Amendment protect you. They've protected American citizens right up until January 6th. And it's going to be very interesting, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, but it's going to begin with the House hearings, the blowback on the people that, in my opinion, manufactured January 6th and on a wholesale basis denied hundreds of Americans their civil liberties are in deep, deep trouble. And the panic is obvious from the things that they're saying. But they did what they did, and as they like to say, we must save our democracy, although we're a republic, and no one is above the law. Hopefully, and this is just my opinion, they're going to eat those words. But from our standpoint, we're just going to have to protect ourselves. Now, our trust package is initially a package of 10 trusts, which consists of one master trust that will hold assigned currencies pre-RV and financial assets like bank accounts, checking accounts, investment accounts, post-RV, and is empowered with managing the sub-trusts. One optional gift sub-trust, which can be utilized if you're gifting currencies to individuals and want to control the post-RV proceeds, or for those of you that are not dinarians or post-RV, want to gift certain assets to friends and family members but still retain control of it. You're giving them use of the asset but not ownership and control of the asset. And then 8 additional standard sub-trusts to hold homes, cars, boats, etc. Now, this was the simplification of a rather sophisticated trust package that we've utilized in the past for our more affluent clients, a package that had an initial cost of anywhere from $6,000 to $10,000. But when we decided to work with dinarians, we knew that that price tag would probably be unaffordable for too many. So by simplifying the package, we've been able to reduce the cost to $3,000. Now, there are several ways you can pay for that. Pay us up front. We'll discount the price to $2,500, saving you an additional $500. If you are simply not able to afford that, we do have a deferred payment arrangement. You'd make an initial payment of $525, which sum would basically offset our out-of-pocket costs just to produce and deliver your trust package to you. The balance of the $3,000 would then be paid in $100 monthly installments. We will charge no interest. The only proviso is once the dinar revalues, within 30 days after that, any unpaid balance would need to be paid. So with this approach, anyone that has currencies and understands the need for getting their affairs in order and their trust in place pre-RV should be in a position to do so. One other suggestion, we do accept credit cards. Pay us up front with a credit card. Not only will you get the $500 discount, but the minimum payment on your card would be substantially less than the $100 a month you'd pay under our deferred payment arrangement. But we will work with you in whatever method works best for you. Our objective is to help you get your affairs in order and your trust in place prior to the revaluation of these currencies for the reasons we've stated, and in a general sense for any American citizen, why it's imperative that they establish this trust package to avoid the high surveillance, high tax state being created and the digital currency as well. Now, I'd like to tell you just a little bit about Trust Unlimited and why, for those of you calling in for the first time, it'd probably be advantageous for you to at least contact to get our initial no-obligation package. This trust package was authored by our attorney, Robert Bly. He's been a practicing attorney for over 40 years, specializing in the areas of estate planning, asset protection, and offshore planning. I myself hold degrees in political science, macroeconomics, and finance. I've worked in these areas for nearly 40 years, and I, along with my clients, were personally involved in the reinstatement of the Kuwaiti dinar in the early 90s. So between the two of us, Robert Bly and I have nearly 80 years of experience precisely in this area, and I frankly know of no firm that can make that claim. Now, under our system of civil procedure, it's when you hold assets in direct title that you can lose control of them or lose them outright. And invariably, it's particularly those times that you need and want control. If you've lived for any length of time, you've either experienced directly in your own life or through friends and family things like unexpected divorce, permanent incapacitation, the onset of dementia, premature death and prolonged and complicated probate processes. Then there are investment losses, business losses, and even bankruptcies. The number 2 loss of wealth now in the aggregate, courtesy of the information age, is identity theft. But the number 1 loss of personal wealth remains confiscation through civil litigation. Anything you own in direct title can be taken from you. So in point of fact, the only way that you can manage, protect, and control everything at all times and in all circumstances is through the establishment of a package of irrevocable trusts, but particularly if you have an asset like these currencies that you anticipate a substantial increase in value. And we at Trust Unlimited will do everything we can to help you accomplish your personal and financial objectives both pre and post-RV as we understand them. So again, thanks so much for listening to the call. If you're interested in getting our initial no-obligation package, you can contact us by phone or email. Our email address is trustswithAnS.com, That's trustswithAnS@gmail.com. Our phone service is 307-274-4122. Contact us by phone or email. We'll be happy to send you our no-obligation initial package. It does contain everything you need if you wish to proceed with the establishment of your family asset protection trust package, but you're under no obligation to do so. The package has a lot of information about us, about trusts, about currencies, and the things we've discussed here today. You can review the package. Contact us if you have any questions. There will be no consultation fee. But again, if you wish to proceed, everything you need is included in the package. Now, our next call, of course, is scheduled for next Wednesday. Certainly, if something of a dramatic nature were to happen between now and then, we'll try to get out an emergency email and schedule an emergency conference call. But failing that, we'll be back next Wednesday, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Thanks so much for listening, everyone. I'd love to hear from you. Have a great week. Bye-bye.